improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Hey guys, Brad Colbert, the Iceman here with another edition of the Carry On podcast. And we'll be doing our SITREP today, talking about the week's current events. And of course, my unfiltered opinion, which is after all, why we're all here. And let's get without any further ado, let's get into it. So we had a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Palestine today. That is supposed to go into effect relatively shortly, or perhaps it already has. We're not exactly sure because reports came in that post-ceasefire Israeli tanks were seen firing on Palestinian civilians. At least that's the report from Reuters. Now, let me tell you that the fog of war is a real thing, and it's entirely possible that the orders for ceasefire had not gotten down to that tank crew. We don't know. But what I do know is that the media was quick to seize on yet another Israeli transgression. I will not forgive the Israelis or make excuses for some of their war crimes. However, I will tell you that everybody seems to beat up on the Jews. No matter what they do, no matter how they go about it, they're always on the losing end of things. So it seems to me that this is small potatoes in the greater story, which is a ceasefire, a returning of the remaining 20 hostages left alive. Israel agrees to withdraw from certain key territories that they are currently holding in Palestine. And maybe, just maybe, we might hit a reset here in what has been a 2-year open conflict in the Middle East. Of course, the administration wasted no time in praising themselves for the work they had done, and I'll give credit where credit is due. It was definitely a team effort. Netanyahu, of course, congratulating Trump on forcing this through. I would like to see it last, but, you know, we have had 60 years of history that says otherwise. But we will see. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I don't think that things in the Middle East are going to turn around anytime soon. However, domestically, we have a couple of other interesting things regarding troops. We have Portland, Oregon, and of course, Chicago seeing what could be a deployment of National Guard troops on their soil. This is a contentious issue for a lot of Americans, and I know that it has been the discussion between myself and those in my inner circle on both sides of the issue. Personally, I think that National Guard troops, as I've said before, is well within his purview to deploy. However, probably a escalation that is needless at this time. And then there's the question of what are the rules of engagement of the National Guard in both of those cities? Are they going to be enforcing state laws, federal laws? Are they protecting federal property from vandalism and destruction? Or are they going to be generalized peacekeepers helping the local and state authorities quell what is, in many respects, a violent protest? It's a great question, and one that I am not exactly sure how it's going to play out in the courts. But what I do know is it's playing out in most of Americans' living rooms. I think this is something that is within his legal purview, but does he have the moral high ground to do it? And that's an interesting question. And I think the moral ambiguity of the National Guard troops in these situations makes for a tenuous rule of engagement for the National Guard troops on the ground. So that is, from my vantage point, really the biggest hurdle, because I can tell you that as a uniformed soldier on the ground, without clear and concise rules of engagement, things can escalate pretty quickly and get really messy. So I'm interested to see what exactly that National Guard's man or woman is going to be told about what they can and cannot do. Heretofore, National Guards have no arrest authority. They are operating in support of the duly elected officials and the law enforcement powers that they grant. So I don't know what is going to take place with their presence. I will say that there has been a tremendous amount of weaponization of the National Guard by the administration. I don't necessarily disagree with quelling some of these protests, especially the ones that have taken place in Illinois. You have 300 to 400 people. There's been equipment from the police that has been stolen and damaged. There's been violence against law enforcement, and that is something that everybody has condemned. Does it require the National Guard? I don't know. I would offer that it probably does not, but it does not take away from the fact that they're most likely going to deploy more of them as the months roll on. And I don't think the courts are going to be able to move fast enough to stop it. We had one judge that was appointed by the administration put a temporary stay while the federal government had 2 weeks to come back with a counter argument. And that is upsetting the administration, obviously, because the judge in question was appointed by Mr. Trump. I don't know how that one's going to play out. It should be interesting to see. Again, I firmly believe that the president has the legal authority to deploy the National Guard wherever he sees fit. So I don't think that he's going to lose on that fight. But whether or not most Americans want uniformed personnel on the streets, whether the intentions are good or not, is a whole nother story. A lot of the indications are that they don't want them. But then again, I don't think the law enforcement officers that are having rocks, bottles, improvised smoke grenades, and fireworks thrown at them have a problem with the National Guard being there. Not standing in uniform on the riot lines, I can tell you, I don't know what it currently feels like, but I'd venture to guess that it's probably not pleasant. So it depends on who you ask, really. If you ask somebody who is not in Chicago or any of the other cities where the National Guard has been deployed, they'll probably tell you they have no business being there. If you are standing in uniform in front of some of these buildings, probably have a different set of opinions. But we'll see how it goes. In other news, our DHS secretary has decided that the MMR, vaccinations could probably be broken up into 3 doses. I honestly think that this is a huge step backwards. I don't understand how one individual is capable of redoing 60 to 70 years of evidence-based research. I mean, we've given that vaccination to millions and millions of individuals. So how much more testing do you want to do? Not only that, but there is no single vaccine. We haven't had one since the late 90s. We would have to go back to the drawing board. And of course, how much research needs to be done on those before it would be accepted into mainstream. All interesting questions, but I think that we have definitely taken a step back in many ways, as well as taking steps forward in others. As far as our trade war with China, we continue to have tit for tat. A few other countries as well. We continue to engage with drug boats in South America, which, I don't know, I'm not exactly opposed to that.
Trump has threatened the anti-insurrection law to sidestep any court orders blocking him, which was last invoked during the riots of LA.
Yeah, the Los Angeles riots, I was down in San Diego for. I watched them live on television with some popcorn. I thought they were definitely the worst that people could be, because I think they use the riots as justification to just loot things. I don't think half the people that were involved in the riots gave a shit about Rodney King or what happened with that verdict. They just wanted to go break stuff. And that's the thing about society is, I mean, most of them just want to watch the world burn when given the chance. Movies like The Purge are fun because we engage in this fantasy that we can just throw all morality and right out the window and just go on a shopping spree. And I think that the administration invoking the anti-insurrection, I think it's theater. Like, okay, so much of what's taken place in the country the last 6 months, it's theater. It's for show. It is one giant troll, and half the country's falling for it. And I am just sitting back laughing my ass off, because most of the stuff that the administration is doing and trying for, it's small potatoes, and people are reacting like it's the crumbling of democracy, and that we're going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be, concentration camps and people asking for your papers in the street. And that's bullshit. It's not even hyperbole. That's just pure fantasy. Stuff like that is not going to happen because, we have some National Guard troops that get deployed to help squash a protest that turned violent, by the way, or that the immigration and customs officials are deporting publicly people in a way that hurts people's feelings. Like the preponderance of the policies, decisions, and actions under the Trump administration has been, I don't want to say for show, for the sake of show, but it's in showmanship. This is just the way that he does business. And a lot of people need to step back and just take it with a grain of salt and stop getting so goddamn worked up about it. It is not that big of a deal. And the consequences of it are not that dire. I just don't see the second and third order effects of a lot of this stuff being as bad as us, that left segment of society says that it's going to be. Why don't you just take a step back, let this thing run its course? I don't for an instant think that it's going to be the end of democracy, that, well, if we don't intervene, what is he going to do next? It's like, bro, half the things that he does because you're intervening. I would be willing to bet if you just relaxed, probably work itself out. So yeah, he could try the anti-insurrection law and deploy more troops, or use that as justification for a suite of other actions. But man, this is going to sound really apathetic on my part, and I apologize if this is the case, but so what? What is the point? Okay, so he does it. Now what? I think that a lot of the things that are being done probably needed to be done. They just didn't need to be done in the way that it's taking place. But it's taking place this way because a lot of what the administration does is for effect. It is fire for effect in many ways. So
how is the government shutdown benefiting Trump and weaponizing furlough payments?
I don't know if the government shutdown is benefiting anyone. I don't think it's benefiting anyone. I know I have friends that have been affected by the furlough. Personally, it's interesting that he is in violation of the 2019 law. Well, I don't want to say in violation, because laws are open to interpretation. And that's really the whole point of a law, is not to be so specific that it narrowly forces an outcome. It's supposed to be broad enough to allow for circumstances to unfold. And this is one of those circumstances where the administration's interpretation is that they don't need to pay back pay to the furloughed workers. So it'll work its way through, and on a case-by-case basis, it'll probably be adjudicated. We're going to have to wait and see. Benefits, there are none. It hurts everybody. But as I said in the last SITREP, I think that the furlough, or at least a government shutdown, I think it needed to happen. And that's a really shitty thing for a lot of people, because there's a lot of people affected by that. And I don't want to say that and be misconstrued as callous or unsympathetic or unempathetic, because that is not the case. I'm affected by it directly. But how long are we going to kick this can down the road is one of the things that I keep saying is, This government shutdown is a direct result of an inability of our elected government to balance the fucking budget. It is something that I am capable of in my own personal life. I don't understand how companies can do it. Small businesses can do it, but the government cannot. It is not hard. We've done it before. And if it means that we have to feel pain before somebody pulls their head out of their fourth point of contact and actually puts a pen and paper together to create a budget, then yeah, I mean, that's what it's going to take. And both sides are going to use the government shutdown as a campaign slogan. Somebody is going to interpret the data in whatever way they need to support their position on the government shutdown. And it sucks because they're missing the point. The point is, Congress, you could have fixed this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You didn't. I mean, Bill Clinton was the last person that presided over a balanced budget. I hate to say it, but that debt clock that's in D.C., they're probably going to have to add another decimal place to the left and the right at the rate we're going. I mean, I don't even know what 100 trillion looks like, but we're screaming towards it. And lastly, we have James Comey, the former FBI director, who was brought up on charges of lying to Congress, as well as obstruction and a few other minor charges. I think the crux of the story is that long after the crime was supposedly committed, that he is finding himself in front of a prosecution again. It's interesting. Many people are painting this as a revenge from the administration towards Comey. But if you look back and remember the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump election, a lot of people attribute Donald Trump's win towards a last-minute press release by Comey that there might be more to the Hillary Clinton issue than they had previously talked about. Essentially, it's the policy of the FBI that close to an election not to have a press release with any information on either candidate so as not to unduly sway the election. And it seems by many after the fact that it unduly swayed the election. So it's interesting that the administration is going after him this far after the events. It is also on a lot of people's minds that this seems like some kind of retaliation or retribution. But me, personally, I think it's probably just a nothing burger. Why do I say that? Because it is not going to go anywhere. I don't think that it's going to be upheld. I think that it's probably going to be dismissed as lack of evidence. And even if it's not, the optics certainly don't look good. But once again, as I've said time and time again, that's the modus operandi of this particular administration. He hits back twice as hard when he's hit, and he has a personal grudge against Comey. So this is going to see its way through the courts, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just the times that we're living in. I can become incensed and I can get upset about it. And you may ask yourself, why am I not having such malaise, or why am I having such malaise instead of a righteous indignation? Honestly, I just can't muster the energy about this sort of things. I cannot adopt this chicken little mentality every time the president decides that he doesn't like someone or inflates something or becomes bombastic. It's exhausting. I think that most of the shit that comes out of his mouth is for effect, and I'm not going to be trolled. There's a lot more that took place during the week that's worth an opinion, especially my opinion, and that's really why you tuned in to hear it. But that is enough for one sitting, and we'll see you again next week. Same time, same place, different topics. For the Carry On Podcast, this has been the SITREP edition. As always, Brad Colbert, the Iceman here. Stay frosty.
Improvise, adapt, and overcome.